The Rockets take on the Knicks, 5 o'clock Eastern start time. New York's minus 11.5, totals 210. And if you want to see which one of these free YouTube picks on this video that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for a membership on my website at brockpage.com. We went 3-2 in our 5 premium sports picks on brockpage.com yesterday. We're also 13-2 with a push in our last 16 extra daily picks on that website. And if you want to access today's extra daily pick, it's only going to cost you just $2.99. We currently have over 965 members who are signed up and active on that site. And if you find yourself really enjoying this video here today, please feel free to give it a thumbs up by smashing that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as well. I'd love to connect with you on a daily basis. Now, despite some lackluster play at home, we're still looking at a Knicks team who shoots the three ball pretty well. They're in the top 10 in the NBA in offensive three-point percentage. Believe it or not, Derrick Rose is making over 43% of his three-pointers, 12 points a game and 3 assists off the bench for Rose. And speaking of scoring, Julius Randle is averaging just about 20 points a game along with double-digit rebounds and 5 assists. Now defensively, the Knicks are in the top 3 in defensive field goal percentage as well. They're taking on a 1-14 Houston team who is yet to win a game on the road. The Rockets are averaging just 100 points a game, and they're making just 31% of their three-pointers. Meanwhile, defensively, Houston's in the bottom 3 in points allowed per contest on the road. John Wall is still out for Houston. Porter is questionable. Now, total-wise, 5 out of Houston's last 9 did actually get over the number. They also saw 8 out of their last 10 meetings with New York get over the total as well. I'm going to lean toward the Knicks, minus 11.5 over 210. Next matchup, Pelicans, Pacers, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. The Pacers are minus 7, totals 211.5. Despite their recent struggles, the Pacers still play their best basketball at home. They're 4-2 straight up at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse, 4-2 against the number in those home games. Indiana's in the top 5 in the NBA in offensive three-point percentage at home. Chris Duarte is drilling 40% of his three-pointers, 13 points a game and 4 boards for the guard. Meanwhile, Malcolm Brogdon is getting over 21.5 points a night himself, 6 rebounds, 6 assists for Brogdon. Indiana's in the top 10 in offensive field goal percentage at home. They're taking on a 3-14 Pelicans team who's got just 1 road win on the season. Now, equally as bad, the Pels are just 2-7 against the spread in those 9 road games. New Orleans is scoring just 98 points a game on the road. Meanwhile, defensively, the Pels are in the bottom 3 in defensive field goal percentage. Now, injury-wise, Holmes and Graham are questionable. Williamson's still out. Total-wise, 2 out of the Pels' last 4 got over the line, throwing out the Clipper game. Meanwhile, the Pacers saw 2 out of their last 4 get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Indiana minus 7 over to 11.5. Next game, Heat, Wizards, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Miami's minus 1, totals 209.5. But as good as Miami's played thus far, they may have to go to work without Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. Both are listed as questionable. Meanwhile, Oladipo and Morris are both still out. Miami's in the bottom 10 in the NBA in second quarter points allowed on the road. They also failed to cover the point spread in 6 out of their last 10 head-to-head meetings with Washington. And speaking of the Wizards, they've actually won 5 out of their last 7 ball games themselves. 6-1 straight up on their home court this year. And speaking of home court, the Wizards have successfully covered the point spread in 6 out of their last 7 home games. Now, Washington is allowing only 103 points a game. They're playing pretty well defensively. They're also limiting their opponents to just 31% shooting from beyond the arc. Now, offensively on the other end of the court, Washington's in the top 10 in home scoring. Bradley Beal's averaging over 23.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists for Beal. Meanwhile, Montrezl Harrell scoring 17 points a night himself, along with 8 boards. A couple assists as well for Trez. Now, injury-wise, Gafford is questionable. Bertans and Bryant are out. When it comes to the total on this one, Washington saw 6 out of their last 10 meetings with Miami get over the number. Meanwhile, the Heat 6-3 to the over when traveling, 10-6 to the over for the whole year. I'm going to lean toward Washington +1 over 209.5. Next game, Hornets Hawks 7:30 Eastern start time. Atlanta's -6.5 totals 227 and a hook. The Hawks are on a 3-game winning streak, 3-0 against the spread in those victories. And despite their struggles in certain spots this year, the Hawks have been really good in front of their home crowd. 6-1 straight up at the State Farm Arena, 6-1 against the number in those 7 home games. The Hawks are scoring 116 points a night at home, and they're in the top 3 in home 3-point percentage. Trae Young scoring over 25 points a night, 3 rebounds, 9 assists for the guard. Meanwhile, John Collins is scoring over 17 points a game himself. 8 rebounds, couple assists for Collins. They're taking on a Charlotte team who's in the second of a back-to-back here this evening. And despite their recent success, the Hornets play their worst basketball on the road. They're just 4-5 straight up when traveling, 4-5 against the number in those road games. And even worse than that, the Hornets allow more points per contest than any other team in basketball. They're also dead last in defensive rebounding. Now, total-wise, 4 out of Charlotte's last 5 fell under the line. Meanwhile, the Hawks went 4-1 to the under in their last 5 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Atlanta -6.5, under 227 and a hook. Next matchup, it is going to be Thunder Celtics, 7:30 Eastern tip. Boston's -10, totals 207.5. Now, the Celtics are playing just .500 basketball at the Garden. They're in the bottom 3 in defensive field goal percentage at home. The Celtics are currently in the bottom 5 in points allowed per contest at home as well. Brown and Williams are both questionable for today's game. They're taking on a Thunder team who's been very good against the number here lately. 2-0 against the spread in their last couple of games. 7-2 against the number in their last 9. OKC currently leads the NBA in road defensive field goal percentage. They're holding their opponents to just 41% shooting from the field when traveling. Meanwhile, offensively, OKC's leading the NBA in offensive rebounding. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander scoring over 20.5 points per contest. 5 rebounds, 4 assists for Shai. Meanwhile, Lou Dort scoring over 16.5 points per contest himself, along with 4 rebounds. Now, total-wise, Boston saw 3 out of their last 6 at the Garden get over the posted number. I'm going to lean toward OKC +10 over 207.5. Next contest, Magic Bucks, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Milwaukee's -11, totals 215.5. Now, the Bucks have struggled to cover the point spread here recently. They're 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 straight. 3-7 against the number in their last 10. The Bucks are also one of the worst covering teams at home. Just 1-6 against the spread at the Fiserv Forum. The Bucks are in the bottom 3 in the NBA in defensive rebounding at home. They're also in the bottom 3 in first quarter points allowed. They're taking on an Orlando team who successfully covered the point spread in their last 2 straight. They're also 5-4 against the spread when traveling this year. The Magic's in the top 5 in guarding the 3 ball on the road. They're also in the top 10 in defensive field goal percentage away from home as well. Now, scoring-wise, Cole Anthony's averaging just about 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists for the guard. Meanwhile, Wendell Carter is drilling 42% of his three-pointers, 12 points a night for the center. Orlando's in the top 10 in road offensive rebounding. Now, injury-wise, Moore and Carter Williams are questionable. Meanwhile, for Milwaukee, Hood is questionable. Lopez is out. Total-wise, Milwaukee 7-0 to the under on their home court, 12-4 to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, the Magic saw 6 out of their last 9 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Orlando +11, under 215.5. Next contest, Grizzlies, Timberwolves, 8 o'clock East. Minnesota's -2.5. Total is 219. The T-Wolves are on a 2-game winning streak, 4-1 against the spread in their last 5. Minnesota leads the NBA in guarding the 3-ball. They're also holding their opponents to just 30% shooting from beyond the arc. That's the same thing. Oh, man, they are leading the NBA in guarding the 3-ball. They're holding their opponents to just 30% shooting from beyond the arc. They're also giving up just 106 points a game at the Target Center. Now, scoring-wise, Karl Anthony Towns is averaging over 23 points a night. 9 boards, 3 assists for Towns. The big man is also drilling 46% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards is scoring 22.5 points a game himself. 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists for the forward. They're taking on a Memphis team who's got a losing record on the road. They're also dead last in the NBA in defending the 3-ball away from home. The Grizzlies are letting their opponents make nearly 42% of their three-pointers against them when they travel. Memphis is currently in the bottom 3 in points allowed per contest. Now, injury-wise, Melton and Merrill are out. Brooks is doubtful. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, Okogie and Reed are questionable for them. When it comes to the total on this one, Minnesota's 9-1 to the under on their home court. Memphis is 4-2 to the under on the road. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota -2.5, under 219. Next matchup, Sixers, Blazers, 10 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Portland is -6, totals 217.5. The Blazers are 7-1 straight up at the Moda Center this season, 75% against the number in those home games. Portland scoring 116 points a night on their home court, and they're drilling nearly 40% of their three-pointers there. C.J. McCollum's averaging 20.5 points a game, along with 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Meanwhile, Dame Lillard's dropping 20 points a night himself, 4 rebounds, 8 assists for Dame time. They're taking on a Philly team who's still going to work without Joel Embiid. He's been in COVID protocol for about 3 years now. Danny Green's also out, and Matisse Thybulle is questionable. The Sixers lost 5 out of their last 6 ball games, and they went just 1-5 against the spread in those very contests. Philly's in the bottom 3 in offensive rebounding, bottom 10 in defending the 3-ball on the road. Now, total-wise, the Sixers saw 5 out of their last 8 ball games fall under the total. Philly's officially 10-6 of the under for the entire season. Portland has gone 5-3 to the under at the Moda Center. I'm going to lean toward Portland -6, under 217.5. And with that, guys, now it's time for our next and final matchup. It is going to be Jazz versus the Kings, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Utah's -7.5, totals 221. The Jazz won their last 2 straight, 10-5 straight up overall for the season. Utah's leading the NBA in defending the 3-ball on the road. They're holding their opponents at just 28% shooting from beyond the arc on the road. The Jazz are also giving up just 102 points a game when they travel. Donovan Mitchell's averaging 2 steals a game defensively, 24 points a night offensively as well for Don. Meanwhile, Bojan Bogdanovic is scoring 17 points a night himself, along with 4 rebounds. Utah's in the top 3 in scoring on average per game. They're taking on a Sacramento team who lost 6 out of their last 7 and went just 1-6 against the spread in those ball games. Now, the Kings also play their worst basketball at home, just 2 home victories on the year for Sacramento. The Kings are currently in the bottom 5 in the NBA in points allowed per contest. Now, total-wise, Sacramento's 6-1 to the under at home, 63% to the under at any location. Meanwhile, the Jazz are 6-1 to the under when traveling themselves. I'm going to lean toward Utah -7.5, under 221. With that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. Powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are 13-2 with a push in our last 16 extra daily picks. I like the Knicks -11.5 over 210. Indiana -7 over 211.5. Washington +1 over 209 and a hook. Atlanta -6.5 under 227.5. OKC +10 over 207 and a hook. Orlando plus 11, under 215.5. Minnesota minus 2.5, under 219. Portland minus 6, under 217 and a hook. And before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that we are 13-2 with a push in our last 16 extra daily picks on BrockPage.com. I'm going to lean toward the Utah Jazz minus 7.5 and the under 221. And with that, guys, now it's time for our shout out of the day. And that's going to go to Kevin Brown, who said the other day, thanks, Brock. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on that website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on BrockPage.com, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of November. I do tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Saturday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.